I'm going to call the meeting to order. So, welcome everyone. This is meeting number 2 of the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. Today is Monday, February 14th, 2022, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody. And and just a quick little introduction that we have going on here as we strive back for some more normalcy. In chambers today, we have Councillor Shelley Braderick, we have Councillor Cheryl Ganan, we also have Councillor Jason Trombetta, and then joining us virtually, we have Councillor Mike Rayner. We also have in our company today, thankfully, Councillor Harold Yonker, and we also have our Mayor, Dave Bylsma. So, just notes to members of the public here that prior to commencing the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting agenda, due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chambers will not be open to the public to attend standing committee or council meetings until further notice. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to jdyson@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and will be read into the public record. This meeting is live streamed and will be also recorded and available on the township website. Moving forward to the land acknowledgement statement, on behalf of the members of council and staff, we wish to acknowledge this land on which the township of West Lincoln operates. The land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe peoples and still home to many Indigenous peoples today. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work here today to follow the Haudenosaunee and systems and blending laws and values of Anishinaabe beliefs to strive to live in harmony and balance throughout the municipality. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people and we accept our responsibility to honor our relations. So at this point, I'm going to look around the room to see if there's any disclosure of any pecuniary or conflict of interest. Not seeing any here, seeing lots of shaking heads. At this point, we have no public meetings tonight, so I'm going to go and see if there's any members of council, and I know there's one, but if there's any other changes of orders of items on the agenda. So I have Councillor Ganan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, because we have several people interested in speaking to an item on the agenda, that item being P18-22, if we could move it forward on our agenda this evening and put it after the presentation, which is number 6.1, and before the public actually have an opportunity to speak, and that way some information about that item can be presented ahead of time. Excellent,
I agree with that. I do believe I need a seconder. I have Councillor Trombetta. And so to our deputy clerk, I have that item I have it here as P15. I think it's supposed to be P18 regarding, so I think I have the wrong resolution in front of me here, so I'm going to scroll down. I think there might have been a little confusion there. So just give 1 second. So I believe it's item P18-2022, and it's a recommendation report PD-23-2022, crossing on the 20 South Condominium update number 2, authorizing bylaw. And that is that recommendation, I guess I should read it all out so everyone's clear about it, is that PD 23-2022 regarding the recommendation report crossing on the 20 South, update number 2, dated February 14, 2022, be received, and a bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement in a draft, or as drafted and approved by legal counsel to ensure the final linkage trail construction, that such sign agreement be deemed to clear condition of 3B. So all we're doing right now is we're voting to move this item to, I believe it's going to basically be a 6.2, but we're just moving it up under item 6.1. So Madam Deputy Clerk, at this point, do I just take the vote to move that item to that spot? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and did you catch my adjustment there? I think the paper I was given was for different
yes,
items. Okay.
I got that. Thank you very much.
So at this point, I don't necessarily see any questions or comments, so I'll call the question to move that item only. All those in favor of moving the item forward? Perfect, that passes unanimously. So all that means for those who are watching is that after we have a presentation, we will be able to bring that item to discuss it before we open up the gallery to be able to put their comments forward. All right, so that being said, I don't think, is there any other items on the agenda we want to relocate or move around? Not seeing any. Okay, so I'm going to move to appointments. Tonight we have Dan Curry from MHBC Planning Limited, and it's regarding the East Smithville Secondary Plan. Dan, are you in the room with us? Awesome. The floor is yours, Dan.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I've got a short presentation. Just going to bring it up on the screen if I may. There, Chair Riley, are you able to see a slide presentation on the screen?
I do.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I'm Dan Curry, MHBC Planning, and it's a short presentation just summarizing the final and the recommended East Smithville secondary plan. Ultimately, there's a staff report and a recommendation in front of council to endorse the final version of this secondary plan. So I have a fairly brief presentation. As you know, this project's been underway for some time, and really its purpose is to determine what's the best land use for the East Smithville area. So this has gone through 3 phases: technical work, draft, proposed secondary plan, and then ultimately phase 3, where we are now right at the end of the process, which is the completion of the secondary plan document and recommending it for approval. And so the secondary plan was undertaken, led by staff, but with us, MHBC, doing the planning work. Crozier Engineering looked after the engineering components. And then near the end of the project, we required HGC Engineering to assist with the land use compatibility and vibration and noise engineering work. And as you know, the secondary plan, East Smithville, it's on the east side of Smithville. And these lands they're shown in red on this particular map. And the existing urban boundary is shown in the white dotted line. So these lands are within the existing settlement boundary of Smithville, and they have been for many years. They and have been planned for development for many years, but they have not yet developed to this point, or at least most of them haven't. The lands they straddle St. Catherine Street. So the secondary plan includes the lands just on the south side of St. Catharines, between the creek and the street. And then the bulk of the secondary plan area is the lands to the north, bounded by the rail line. So as I said, the majority of the lands, at least those on the north side of St. Catharines, are currently in agricultural production, but they are designated urban. And they are currently, this is the land use plan from the township's official plan. And the secondary plan area is a little harder to see. It's got a red dotted outline. And the lands are currently designated for employment uses. So the lands that are closest to St. Catharines are designated service commercial, and the interior portion of the secondary plan area is employment. And they've been designated for these land uses for many, many years, but they have not yet developed. And so that was really the motivation behind undertaking this secondary plan was, is there a more appropriate land use, given that these are really the last remaining undeveloped lands within the settlement area boundary. So that was really the purpose of this whole project. And you will recall, members of the committee, we've been back at various times throughout the last year and a half to provide updates on where we are. But it started with the technical work and on the environmental, infrastructure and engineering components. And there was a steering committee that consisted of staff from the region of Niagara, the Conservation Authority, and township staff. There was a landowner consultation at the beginning and then throughout the process. You may recall that about a year ago, we came to committee, presented really what were the findings of the technical work. There was an open house in April. The steering committee reviewed what was then the draft secondary plan. At a public meeting in June, we presented the draft secondary plan and provided opportunity for community input at this particular committee. And then since then, we finalized the secondary plan, and one of the components or pieces that we're really working on over these last few months is the land use compatibility analysis. And I'll come back to that in a bit of detail. But we are now at the end where the final secondary plan is completed and is in front of ultimately committee for consideration. So this is the land use schedule or the community structure plan. It hasn't really changed since the presentation at at the public meeting in June. But the main strokes are really it's built on the technical work, and this sort of shows up in brown on my screen, but it's a dark green, which is the natural heritage features that are associated with 20 Mile Creek on the south side of St. Catharines. And then there are two tributaries or small water courses that are also identified as natural heritage areas. The areas shown in blue are proposed for stormwater management. The lands, roughly the eastern portion of the lands drain to the east, the western portions drain to the west, and outlet to those small tributaries. Through the work, the technical work, both done by Crozier and then with input from the region is only going to permit access off St. Catharines at the roundabout. The other road connection point connecting the secondary plan to the existing urban area would be an intersection on Industrial Road. The land uses are described by the various colors, and one of the organizing principles was that there be a non-residential business park type use along the west and the north that acts as a transition from the residential area in the center of the neighborhood to the west and to the north, where there's existing commercial and industrial uses. The center of the neighborhood, the yellow, the orange, low density and medium density residential. Then it shows up as kind of a light green or teal color on my screen, adjacent to St. Catharines is mixed use. Allows for a limited range of commercial, but really medium to high density residential type uses. So that's really the structure of the plan and the land use. And the secondary plan is a policy document. It would be incorporated in the township's official plan. And so the community structure described on the previous page and in that schedule is part of it. The land use designations are described in policy that set out the various uses that are permitted within each designation, as well as the height, the maximum density, urban design requirements, etc. There's a servicing and infrastructure strategy, land use compatibility policies and direction are within the secondary plan. And then there's phasing and implementation policies. So very much a typical secondary plan, much like the others that are in Smithville. So the land use compatibility analysis, there's two considerations. One is that the Smithville Industrial Park is directly to the north, on the north side of the railway tracks from this secondary plan area. And then the second is the rail line, both of which emit noise, but potentially emit noise, vibration, and are considerations when we're planning, in this case, for a change of use, which would be more sensitive land uses, residential. So HGC Engineering undertook a noise and vibration monitoring and study, and the conclusions and the recommendations are here. That was done over the course of the fall, with HGC preparing their report at Christmas time, and then we made the necessary inputs into the secondary plan over the last month or so. But really the findings were that noise and vibration from the industrial uses across the track is really insignificant. While there is some noise, it's below the ministry standards in terms of impact on any residential uses that might be in the proximity. But where the noise and vibration do cause a concern is from the CN rail line. And that it can be dealt with, but there needs to be mitigation measures built into both the plan and then ultimately on the draft plans of subdivision and the development of the lands. The conclusion was that the overall secondary plan structure that was that I showed on the previous slides was sufficient, subject to the recommendations and the mitigation that I've summarized in the following paragraph. So there is a requirement for a berm and a noise wall along the length of the railway track. a 30-meter development setback from the railway. It's recommended that there be warning clauses added to agreements of purchase and sale to identify that there may be noise, there may be vibration due to the railway track, and a requirement for air conditioning, enhanced facade construction for those portions of where development occurs in the secondary plan close to the railway track. And those aren't unusual conditions. That occurs in many places. What it really requires is air conditioning and then brick construction, brick facades. And then there's a policy requirement for further assessment as part of future planning applications. And I can just describe a little bit how that plays out on the land. So the railway track is shown here along the north, what I'll call the north edge of the secondary plan area. And the industrial lands are just beyond to the north. So on the development side, it's kind of hidden under the black line and the dotted green line, but there is a 5-meter open space buffer. So that 5-meter open space would be the location for a berm, noise wall, or combination of berm and noise wall, as well as a community trail. The green dotted lines on this structure plan indicate potential opportunities for off-road trails and pedestrian connections. So that entire 5-meter open space buffer provides dual purpose, off-road trail linkage, as well as noise attenuation. Then the pink area by land use already provides a buffer that the business park uses provide a setback and almost a shield from the industrial uses, the rail line, to the more sensitive residential uses in the interior. And then there's a requirement for a 30-meter setback from the edge of the rail property. So 5 meters of that, of which would be the buffer, and then another 25 meters. That would be the closest that development buildings, built structures could be to the railway track. So it adds an element of distance. So that's how and a lot of those recommendations were already built into the original structure plan that you would have seen a few months ago, and just reinforced through the work that HGC had concluded. They didn't conclude that there necessarily had to be any different makeup or shift to the land uses than what had been developed and presented to the community previously, but simply reinforced this structure, as well as the additional policies around noise warning clauses and type of construction for those buildings that are close to the railway track. The other point, just to connect on, and we briefed you on this through earlier presentations and then the public meeting. As you know, the ongoing master community plan is underway. And this is the schedule, maybe not the latest one, but one of the schedules for the proposed expansion to the settlement boundary. And the point here is just that we have been through this secondary plan process in communication with the community planning process, so that the two are developed coherently and in relation to each other. And in particular, given that the secondary plan proposes to change land use from employment to residential, the master community plan has identified that, and in terms of the overall land needs for residential and employment uses in the growth areas. Just a more detailed slide showing where the secondary plan area fits into that overall master community plan. And then, so lastly, conclusion, the secondary plan is now complete and is ready to be approved. Township staff are recommending both approval of the secondary plan, and then there is an official plan amendment that's being recommended that would implement and bring the secondary plan into the township's official plan. The region of Niagara has signed off. They support the secondary plan and the official plan amendment and identified that it's exempt from regional approval. So it's the region's responsibility that the land use compatibility, those are provincial guidelines. It's the region's responsibility to ensure that the provincial interest is being upheld. And through the work of HGC and the changes we made, additions we made to the secondary plan, the region is now satisfied that those land use compatibility issues have been addressed and they have signed off. So with that, I think that, yeah, that brings me to the conclusion. I have gone over that fairly high level. Certainly, Chair Riley, if there's questions or points that need further elaboration, I'd be happy to do so. But thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. I think at this point, I know we're going to have this come up for discussion in a little bit. I guess I'll do a quick look to see if anybody had any immediate questions they wanted to address. I can't see all members. Oh, there we go. So nothing immediate. No one's shaking their head. So I think, Dan, if you don't mind hanging tight for a little bit, it won't be too long. We're going to move forward for now, but appreciate the presentation. All right, so that being said, now we're coming to the next section, which is what we brought forward, which was item, let me bring it up here. It's, yeah, I think I got to read the whole thing. So, all right, so it's item, we moved item P1822, Planner 2, Garrett Borma, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, and it's a recommendation report number PD 23-2022, Crossing on the 20 South Condominium Update number 2, and Authorizing Bylaw. And the recommendation is that we have report PD 23-2022 regarding recommendation report crossings on the 20 South update number 2 dated February 14th, 2022 be received. And a bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement and drafted and approved by the legal counsel to ensure future linkage trail construction and that the signed or such signed agreement be deemed to clear condition 3B. So I'm going to need someone to move that for me. I have Councillor Braderick, if I can get a seconder. I have Councillor Gannan. So at this point, it's on the floor. I'll go to Councillor Gannan first, but I think we're probably going to refer to our director in a second.
That's precisely what I'd like to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm just hoping that our director would explain what the situation is going forward. And if not, perhaps then Mr. Borma could do the same. So either one of you, please. Whoever's most comfortable dealing with this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I'll start, but Garrett knows a bit more of the details, so he can probably fill in some blanks and definitely answer questions as well. This is a development on the former railway lands between Town Line Road and 20 Mile Creek that received 2 layers of planning approval, I'll call it. The first was approval of a site plan to allow for a 24-unit townhouse development. And then the second was an approval of a plan of condo that allowed for the conveyance of those condo units for sale purposes. The applicant proceeded to obtain building permits and start construction under the site plan approval, which allows basically for the units to be rental because it's all 24 units on one parcel. It's the condominium piece that actually allows for conveyance. Normally, by the time the condo is about half built out, as I would understand it, condominium approval is obtained and then conveyances can start to occur and normal condominium corporation activities can unfold on the property. In this case, there have been challenges with this site from the get-go, and I believe that the planner for this development is actually on the meeting tonight as well, and he can confirm there have been environmental issues from 2 sources, one being the former landfill site that's under the Rock Street Park, and the second being from the railway lands themselves. In the creation of the condo development, the plan of condominium itself that's proposed for registration at some point, once conditions are cleared, would convey the 24 units of land with the condominium units, but the surplus lands, which are effectively floodplain lands, at the north end by 20 Mile Creek were meant to be conveyed to the township. Through the process of the approval, staff became aware of the fact that the environmental assessment work that had been done looked at the area where the houses were being built, but did not look at the area that was to be conveyed to the township as part of the floodplain lands. It becomes complicated at that point because the environmental regulations are heightened when you're in proximity to a water course or an open body of water. So in the case of the extra area, the floodplain lands that are to be conveyed to the township, the standards are a little bit higher or more rigorous to comply with. Mr. DeHaan, the owner, has hired an environmental engineer to do an assessment and a review of the lands, and they've identified that the lands that are to be conveyed to the township are in fact contaminated lands. However, they identify that there's an exception. I'm not going to call it a loophole. There's an exception. I think it was granted with intent to allow for conversion of lands to trails, especially in the instance of conversion from rail to trail. Across Ontario, there's a number of rails converted to trails. In fact, I believe there's one down in Wainfleet as well that's quite a popular location for people to go walking. And so in the event that rails are to be converted to trails, there's an exception to allow that to occur. The lawyers are identifying that this tiny piece of land that's to be conveyed to the township could be deemed to be a trail, but they're proposing not to build a trail on it. Township staff are recommending that, in fact, let's be proactive and productive and build a trail on the lands. And the report is written to basically say, if we are to receive the lands and a trail is built on them, we'll consider that as clearance of the condition. Another step, Mr. Chair, just to make sure I put on the table before I forget, there is a joint meeting of all parties tomorrow, including Township Legal Counsel and Legal Counsel for the applicant, to discuss more fully what that would look like, and also what kind of an agreement might be required to implement some sort of a future trail construction on this parcel of land. So the report as written, Mr. Chair, is proposed to implement this exception, as I can call it, to allow for the use of the land for trail purposes, but actually to require something positive in the form of construction of a trail in this location. The only other alternative that appears to be available is to require a full environmental assessment of the floodplain lands so that conveyance to the township can occur with evidence of compliance with provincial regulations. Although township staff aren't aware of the extent and length and duration, we've been told by the applicant's planner that could take 18 months. So that just doesn't seem like a workable solution. That's why we're suggesting that a workable solution that might actually be reasonably timely to clear the condition is this trail concept as proposed in our staff report.
Excellent, thank you. I'll go back to Councillor Ganane.
So thank you very much for that, Mr. Treble. It was a lot to explain, and I'm sorry that we put you on the spot that way, but I think people need to understand that that this is something that, although we understand the frustration of the residents who are concerned that they are no longer or have not been able to finalize their properties. Certainly the township doesn't want land that is not environmentally safe, and we can't take that responsibility. So to me, this just sounds like perhaps a win-win situation, and hopefully legal from both sides will be able to work out some kind of a detail there. Mr. Bormo, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that's good with you? Okay, thank you then. I'm finished then, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council or committee? Not seeing or hearing any. I do want to mention, I think part of the frustration I've heard from some of the residents is realistic. It comes down to the duration of how come it took as long to get to where we are today. And I think it's really important that it's emphasized that this was really beyond the township's hands. And I'm kind of more or less curious to you, Mr. Director, is there something that we can put in our bylaws in the future that could allow us to expedite this in any capacity, or are we just fully at the mercy of whenever the developer or builder decides to follow through with the requirements or the regulations or the agreement?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only thing that we have in place is really provincial authority that gives us a window to say that you have 3 years to meet conditions of draft plan approval. In this case, 3 years expired eons ago, and this has been extended, I believe, multiple times now through extensions of draft plan approval. I think in this particular case, and I've heard this before, the work of the environmental consultants takes a long time. And I don't know whether that's because they're so busy or because the regulations are so complicated. But, you know, it's a 250-page document I'm holding in my hands. It's kind of hard to tell, I realize. But the 250-page document took a long time to generate, as I understand it. And so, you know, the length of time to get to today has been outside of the developer's control and our control. Really, it's the environmental work that had to be done.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Mayor Bylsma?
Yeah, so I just raise a kind of an ordering concern here, Mr. Chair, and that's simply that we've dealt with this. We've heard from our directors, and I have no problem with that. But I don't know if there's members of the public that wish to still ask something, and so the request to address items on the agenda is actually following this, and so I can appreciate that you wanted to get some information out there and hopefully assuage some of the concerns that might be brought up by the residents. But at the same time, if we deal with it and then they address some questions, I suppose it's not the final, like we can still bring it back at council. But I'm just concerned if you have thought about that.
Yes, and so thank you for the question there, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in consultation, even with our director, I had mentioned the idea of bringing this forward with Councillor Ganan there. We were wanting to more or less have everyone understand what was actually being presented before we had people come back, because we've heard so much misinformation and misunderstanding. It was really to help get that information clarified during the process, and then they're still able to address their concerns. But if there are some people who weren't sure or didn't know what the information was, at least from what they were hearing from one end, we wanted to kind of have an opportunity to clearly show what the position of the township was, instead of making them wait around for about an hour and a half and then having to find out that comment where we could have possibly saved them some time and maybe even some frustration. So that was the general consensus there, and they're still more than welcome to comment and contribute in that respect, and we'll do our best to answer the questions. This was really just an opportunity to help them be a little bit more informed before we get to that situation, because again, as we know how misinformation tends to travel, we didn't want to have to spend the time of them addressing items on the agenda what might have been mute comments, considering things that they were under the impression of when they actually didn't need to worry about it at all.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I would like to be able to keep the door open an inch there. So I have no further, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The door is open well more than an inch. All right, so seeing that, I'm not seeing any other members of council here with any other questions. So at this point, we're voting to receive this and to have a bylaw prepared to authorize. This is just for committee to, so I'll read this again. So report PD 23-2022 regarding the recommendation report crossings on the 20 South update number 2 dated February 14, 2022 be received. And a bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement as drafted and approved by legal counsel to ensure further linkage trail construction, and that the signed agreement be deemed to clear condition 3B. And so I have my mover and seconder, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Yeah. And opposed? All right, we have one opposed, and that carries. So at this point, we're going to go to... we're going to go request to address items on the agenda, and I know we got quite a few people in the audience, so I'm going to read this out. So under section 1013, 5 and 6, general rules, 1 hour in total shall be allocated for this section of the agenda, and each individual person shall and only be provided with 5 minutes to address their issue. Some exceptions may apply. A response may not be provided. The matter may be referred to staff. A person who wishes to discuss a planning application or a matter that can be appealed will be permitted to speak up to 10 minutes. At this point, I will inquire to see if there's any members of the gallery that would like to have a chance to speak here. So if you're on a phone, all you have to do, I think you hit *9. But if you're in by Zoom, you can. I brought it up on my phone here. You can just raise your hand. So. Okay, so I see, also I'll start with the top here. I'll go with, we'll start with the top there. So we'll go with David. So before you speak there, David, I'm going to get you to state your first name, your last name, and your address for the public record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, good. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee and staff. My name is David Samus. I'm here as representative of the Smithville Landowners Group this evening. We are here in support of item 10.6 or report P 20-22. The landowner group is voicing support of this initiative for a few reasons tonight. Town Council has already approved the urban boundary expansion 3 months ago. A majority of the reports have been prepared, completed, and paid for by the landowners to justify the expansion. Further, the landowners group will pay for any further costs for consultant fees or any township costs for this next step. We do believe this is the township putting their stamp on a made of West Lincoln solution rather than running the risk of potential changes or risks for delays at other levels of government. We feel time cannot be lost as there's still significant work through secondary planning, infrastructure planning for future development to occur. We cannot see the township lose control or be delayed in the process of this growth exercise. The region and other municipalities can interfere in the township solution that has been put together over the last 2 to 3 years. The landowner group and township consultants have worked in an innovative and creative way to move the process forward collaboratively to work towards to create the township solution, which we believe should not be modified or delayed. That concludes my presentation tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. And yes, sorry, I was just trying to take notes down there. So I appreciate that. And yeah, and we'll go to the next person on the list here. So I don't have controls here like we normally do. So we're going to go to Franca there. So I'll get, and then so David, if you could just make sure you're muted if you're not already. Thank you. All right, Franca, if you can again start with your first name, last name, and your address, and then you can go forward with addressing which item you'd like to address.
Yes, thank you. I'm Franca Stinson, and I live on 11 Carter Road, Carter Drive, which is the crossing on the 20 that we're discussing tonight for the P1822. My concern is we have been here for over a year and a half. We have been paying this so-called interim rent. We were told as of the last person who was to enter the home, once it was built, that we were to close, but yet we're still paying this money and they're still asking for more. And I'm sorry, we're retired, some of us on disability, some of us working, but the majority we're retired. There's a couple that are on disability. We just can't afford this kind of money anymore. We bought our home. We were never told about this North land that had to be environmentally done. I wasn't even told that was a railroad at one point. So there was no disclosure. There was no, and every time we asked, it was like, oh, it's the town that's slowing us down. I hear from the town, oh, it's DeHaan Homes. Well, which is it? We never got a straight answer. Lawyers were not being answered. Their lawyer was not answering our lawyer. We were at an impasse. We're like, what's going on here? There's people that have been paying her for over, 15, 16 months now. It's outrageous. Is there any way that we can close let's say the 24 homes and you and DeHaan work on that north end?
So I'll go to our director just to get him to weigh in. I from what we just heard there, it sounds like they're going to be meeting with their, I guess the representatives of the legal team tomorrow, and they're hoping to further conversations and have a better idea there. But I think that part of the issue may be a little bit more complicated than I think it is. So I'll go to our director and see if he can provide a couple of comments.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's really two options that are on the table, and the one that we're proposing tonight, as written, allows for us to clear the condition once an agreement is in place. The agreement would then spell out how, where, when, and why a trail connection would occur, but the trail connection could occur afterwards with some sort of a security attached to an agreement. So that, Mr. Chair, I don't want to put a number to it, but that in theory should allow for clearance and then conveyance of the individual housing units, I would think, within weeks to a month or so at the worst case scenario, perhaps. The other option that has been presented by the reports is that they do this this assessment work, risk assessment work, as outlined in provincial regulations, and that I understand will take 18 months. And quite frankly, I don't believe there's going to be any staff or legal counsel prepared to recommend to the township that you take ownership until that risk assessment is done. So the report as written with the option as recommended is weeks to a month or so away from probably completion. The risk assessment work would be perhaps as much as 18 months away. So those are the two options that I'm aware of, and that's kind of the timeline that we have to deal with.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Director. Yeah, so if I could just, again, I think at this point, I would wait to see how, I guess, conversations go tomorrow. We've already approved the, kind of like a pre-approval of the bylaw being signed. So once the agreement is signed, then we just have to wait for it to be ratified at council, which is actually what the Mayor Bilsma was asking about originally, if there was still kind of an inch, he mentioned, open, and that's where we can bring it back at council if we need to make any changes or recommend amendments to what we currently have. So right now, I guess to answer your question, those are the two options, and hopefully things go well tomorrow that you guys can put this behind you, because I know it's been a long journey for you all and a very expensive one at the same time.
That's for sure. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. So I'll go back to the gallery here. Thank you. So Frank, if you can you lower your hand? It just keeps you up at the top there. I have Terry Bell next, and then I'll go to Leanne right after. So Terry Bell, if you can say your first and last name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Terry Bell. My address is 7 Manorwood Drive here in town in Smithville. And I'd like to say good evening to Mr. Chair and the council, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to address number 9 under communications, 9.1. Item P14-22. As I was reading through the agenda, I see that Deborah Kuhn has handed in her resignation on the board of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. And given that there's only 8 months maximum left in this current term, and it's a lot less when you take the downtime, and that process to appoint somebody else could take up to 2 to 3 months to fill the position that's being left vacant, and the cost involved in it. And I would like to put myself forward as a candidate for the vacant position on the MPCA to represent West Laketon on that board for the remainder of this current term. I would also like to be given consideration from the council when the time comes for this position. And with that said, I'd like to thank everybody for that opportunity to speak.
Appreciate that, Terry. Yeah, so I guess council will keep that in mind. I imagine we could, whatever decision I guess comes, and when that comes, there might be some kind of notice that goes out. We can probably make sure, with you being attached to the meeting, that can get sent to you, however we decide to deal with that. So appreciate you putting yourself forward again, and yeah, thank you for that. I'm assuming that's all your questions or comments?
That's it. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, sir. Thank you. I'm going to go to the next person. I think I said Leanne, if I'm not mistaken. And so Leanne, if you can, and Terry, if you could just lower your hand when you get a chance, that'd be great. So Leanne, whenever you're ready, you can just state your first, last name, and your address there for the record.
Okay, thank you. It's Leanne Timber Sharp, and I live at 15 Carter Drive in Smithville, and I'm also speaking in terms of the issue that's come up tonight, P18-22. Franca was talking about it as well. And so we just, further to her discussion, obviously we appreciate there's a meeting happening tomorrow night and hoping that we do get resolution. One of our biggest questions is really about why this issue had come up during the construction. And we actually have an email to us from the builder that stated when we were really questioning him, that he said the holdup was actually because the township was deciding whether to accept the lands to the north that are not part of the condo. He said, please understand that this condition of approval was added by the township during the construction of the crossings on the 20. So this is probably what has led us to reach out to the town as well. We're getting very different information from the builder versus what we're hearing from you guys. And we appreciate all the information we've gotten, but ultimately it's costing us money. And as you know, we're all very, very upset about this. So if somebody can talk to that, that would be great.
All right, I'll go to our director. Would you mind being able to speak to that a little bit, sir?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm recalling back, I believe, as I recall, the township wasn't aware at the time that the draft plan of condo was approved that there was a portion of floodplain that was not part of the condo. Right now, the land is obviously the old railway land, and it goes right from the road to the water's edge, I guess, probably. And the township was of the understanding that that whole area was going to be the plan of condo. When they brought in a draft of the plan, it became evident that there was surplus lands to the condo that wasn't going to be in the ownership of the condominium itself and was to be conveyed to the township. And it's at that point that it became evident that not only were the lands to be conveyed to the township, they were to be conveyed to the township in an unevaluated state, which our insurance company simply will not accept. We have to be aware of and know the quality of the lands that are being conveyed to the township. So a condition had to be added to allow for the lands to be conveyed to the township. Yes, it was added as a condition after the fact because at the time we weren't aware that there was conveyance to the township that was proposed.
Now, if I could ask, is that partly to do with how it was originally presented to the township? Is that what I'm trying to provide that, I think, the gap of clarity of how that kind of was overseen?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, I don't have any of that original mapping in front of me here tonight, but my recollection is that the presentation was a 24-unit condominium that was taking up the whole of the lands from Townland Road to the water's edge, and the indication of a piece that was coming to the township came later. Okay,
so by the time they notified us, okay, the change. All right, Leanne, did you have any other questions or comments?
I guess our biggest question is, how was the developer allowed to start building when this was the case? None of this information was disclosed to us and really has only come to light now, actually.
So that's a great question. I'll go to the director if he wants to chime in here. I feel like part of that might be, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak because I'm not 100% sure where that, why that happened the way it did.
Mr. Chair, I kind of alluded to it in my presentation earlier. The two different types of planning approval allowed for different stages of development to happen, basically. So the site plan approval, that was the first approval that was granted, allows for 24 residential units on the same parcel of land. So 24 residential units as rental, if I can call it, are allowed through the site plan process. The plan of condominium process is then the final step that allows for conveyance or the change of ownership of each of the individual units. So there's nothing wrong with the process as proceeded. Developing units as rental units at the start of the process is fine. It's just that the plan of condo approval conditions have taken a whole lot longer than ever envisioned or than is normal, and as a result, the conveyance of the ownership is not possible until the final conditions of clearance have occurred. At this point, we do not even have a submission from the applicant with respect to clearance of conditions. We're assuming there's only this one left because it's the one we're all talking about, but we don't have anything that clears any of the conditions yet in our possession.
Okay, so that's still on the developer to bring forward to the township then?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. So Leanne, I hope you kind of understood that. I know it sound a little bit more complicated than it sometimes feels like it needs to be, but it's not exactly black and white to trying to explain how that process works. But is there anything else?
No, I just can't stress enough, how frustrated we all are, obviously, and, the money that we're having to put out as a result of all of these issues that we just really can't wrap our heads around.
Okay. Yes. Sorry again to hear what you guys had to go through. I think that's very unfortunate. And I'm hoping that this week is a very successful week for everybody.
As we are. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so if we can go back to participations. Okay, so I think that's the last one. I see a Q&A thing here. What is, can we click on that for a second? Just looking at the line north. This is
Mr. Chair, if I
yeah,
may.
Yeah, go for it.
So just to let everybody in the attendance room know that we do not recognize questions and answers. They would have to.
All right, you have to come forward to speak to it. I know, and I saw the one name, it says anonymous, and we actually need to have a first and last name. So whoever wrote that question, if you'd like to come forward, I'll give you an extra 15 seconds here to put your name up and to ask your question, and then we can see if we can address it. Otherwise, we'll move forward with the meeting. I see Jared's hand up, but I think that's going to be for a different question. So at this point, well, Jared, if you want, I'll let you have the floor here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Jared Marcus here from IBI Group. I'd like to speak just briefly to the crossings report that was up there, just to address some of the information. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here. It's a long-standing project with a lot of history to it. I agree with most of what Mr. Trebles stated about the application tonight. We're working to a solution. The problem did raise its head quite late in the process, and we've been working on that for quite some time. He is correct. The environmental reporting has taken a lot longer than any of us had hoped it would. Initially, it was only supposed to take a few months, and that was the beginning of 2021. But unfortunately, that's delayed all the way into 2022. What I would like to just say is that the environmental reporting has come back showing we've done some additional remediation to the land. So the reporting does show that the lands in question are remediated to a standard residential level. But Mr. Treble's correct that the proximity to the creek, the water body, is what drives a higher reporting level, and that the natural occurring water, groundwater level in that area is really the problem that we're facing, and that's what drives the issue in achieving that record of site condition. So, we are working towards it. There might be a lack of information, and then part of the lack of information was just the lack of known information at the time. So we've been working with staff. We're hopeful that we will have a resolution tomorrow, and then we will proceed very quickly to registration.
Thank you for that. I think, I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point. If not, we can address it later in the meeting. I'm going to go back to, I thought I saw the thing say 2 hands up, but I could have misread that. Oh, I do have, okay, I have Sherrod, and I think that's all for now. So, Sherrod, I'll let you go forward. I just need you to state your first name, last name, and your address there for us. But you'll have to unmute us, or mute yourself, I mean. I'll give him a minute. Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And God bless everybody.
Thank you. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you. And hello to everyone. To make things a little healthy and hearty, my name is Sharad Sharma. I live on 2979 South Grimsby Road 18, which is in Smithville. And we love our community, which is West Lincoln, Smithville. Today is a Valentine's Day. So I would like to donate $3,000 for our firefighters. I believe I attended the last meeting, sir, which increased from 14 to 16. But if these funds can be used in any kind of help and assistance to our community, please guide me or email me where to divert these funds. Thank you so kindly.
Well, that's yeah, hold on a second. That's very generous, Sherrod. I appreciate that. I think you're probably best to reach out to the clerk. I'll just go to the deputy clerk for a second, and then I'll go to Councillor Trembetti. You wanted to ask a question, but our deputy clerk, what is probably the best way for Sherrod to, make that generous offer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would actually probably refer this to the CAO, but my suggestion would be to contact Joanne Chime and our Director of Finance. And this might be put on the Administration and Finance agenda for next week. That would be my suggestion. CAO Hendry, I'm not too sure if you have any other direction.
Thank you to Deputy Clerk Dyson. I think that's a good instruction, and thank you very kindly, Mr. Sharad, Mr. Shar. Sorry, Mr. Sharma. I apologize. That's very generous.
You can call me Sam, no problem.
Thank you. That's very generous, and this is sort of
no. We are so blessed to be in Smithville, please, and everybody is working in a very team environment, sir and madam. God bless West Lincoln. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, so sure, if you have any troubles, you reach out to myself or your local counselor, and we'll do that. I know Councillor Trombetta wanted to make a quick comment here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sherrod. Obviously, it's a very generous donation that you made. Obviously, I know you well. You live around the corner from me, and we've spoken many times. You know, I know the CAO did mention that it's going to come to Administration, Fire, Finance Committee, but I'd also like you to come in. Maybe we can do something more formally. Now that some things look like they're opening up very soon, maybe we can get you to come in down at the town hall, if that's okay with you, Sherrod. But you know, feel free if we can, maybe we can arrange something that you can come in and we can hopefully see you in person, shake your hand. That's what I'm looking to do. So if that interests you, maybe we can come down at the Administration, Fire, Finance Committee, maybe not next week or the following one, and then we can arrange something like that. What do you think, sir?
Absolutely, sir. God bless again. Thank you so kindly. We are one team. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And if you have any troubles reaching out, don't hesitate to reach out to Councillor Trombetta if he's in your ward there, or even myself. I know Mayor Billsman has got his hand up, so I'll go to Mayor Billsman real quickly.
Yeah, and just to be brief, thank you, sir, so much for your generosity and for your love for our community. It's a testament to what the township staff and the council worked so hard to put together. So thank you so much.
And I'll go to Councillor Rayner.
Yes, thanks, Sam, very much. We know each other too. It's always a pleasure, especially on the times when election times, when you knock on doors, and I go down Fulton, and I always know when I knock on your door, we have a great conversation. So you're very supportive of this township. You're an extremely positive individual, and it's a pleasure to know you. And this is very much appreciated to the township. This is a very rare thing that we have something like this. You see this in Hamilton all the time. In fact, in the Hamilton paper, Javinsky's donated another $3 or $4 million to the hospital funds and everything. You see all this the time in the big cities, but you don't see this in the small towns. And this is fantastic. This is very much appreciated, and it shows the quality of the people that we have in this township. So thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, well, certainly will. So I think I got Councillor. I guess everybody wants to thank you personally. So I got Councillor Yonker.
I'll just keep it short and sweet. God bless you as well, sir. Thank you.
God bless you, sir, as well. Thank you so kindly.
Okay. Thank you again, Sam. And again, I've of all the times we've had people address items on the or speak, I don't think I've had that in many of my experience. So you really caught me off guard there. But again, it's not too much more I can say that hasn't already been said. You're an outstanding citizen. We certainly appreciate that generosity. So have yourself a lovely evening, and I'll just move forward to see if there's any other members that have had their hand up in the meantime. Not seeing or hearing any, so we're going to move forward. All right, so we have no consent agenda items tonight. We're going to go to communications. So the first item on communications, which is item P1422, Deborah Kuhn-Peterson, resignation from the board of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, also known as the MPCA. The recommendation is that email received on February 7th, 2022 from Deborah Kuhn-Peterson of the resignation from the Board of Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority be received with regrets, and that bylaw 2019-52 be repealed, and that a new bylaw be presented at the February 22, 2022 council meeting to remove Deborah Kuhn-Peterson from Schedule H, Board of Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority bylaw 2018-114. I'm going to need a mover. I got Councillor Yonker, if I can get a seconder. I got Councillor Rayner. I don't know if there's a point for any questions. If anyone has any questions or I got Councillor Rayner.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a shame that Deborah Kuhn-Peterson had to resign. I wish to thank her for her service. Very much appreciated. And now we have a situation come up now where we've got less than a year to go. And through you, Mr. Chair, is this directed by the region? And is there any mandate of filling this position with only less than a year to go?
I'm going to refer to the deputy clerk. My understanding, though, is that the MPCA operates through the region, so the region would be the one seeking, I believe, an appointment or the nomination originally, and then they ask each municipality to provide a representative. But I'll go to our deputy clerk just to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to you to Councillor Rayner. That is correct. This is through the Niagara region. So the township didn't appoint Deborah. We recommended her to the region. So that would the clerk Joanne Chime has been in contact with the regional clerk Anne Marie, and she has a meeting with the clerk of the NPCA. So she has a meeting this week. We'll find out more with respect to what our next steps are, but right now we're just recognizing her resignation. I hope that helps.
It does in a way, because it's an interesting situation that we've got. It's just that with less than a year left to go, it's an expensive process to go out publicly to find somebody. It's also very time consuming, and it's staff time consuming. And if it doesn't have to be filled, then obviously it would be better just to let it lapse till the end of this year, and then we can start fresh again instead of going through all that stuff. The other option, of course, is to appoint somebody, and Councillor Bell did mention that he would be interested. So I was just wondering if it was a mandate from the region that we had to fill this position through a recommendation from the township to the region for their approval, that we could at least do this in the interest of just filling it for the next few months. And of course, obviously at election time, then everything would change again. So it's just an opportunity to make it a little bit easier, because it seems like a lot of work that staff have to go through and everybody else would have to go do, and a cost to the taxpayers for a position that somebody who's just getting into it probably wouldn't even be familiar with it too much before the term would be over. So it's just my thought. Anybody else's thought on this would be appreciated too.
So I have Councillor Trombetta. Oh, sorry, Deputy Clerk, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that this concern was also raised to the regional clerk. So they do understand our same concerns that Councillor Rayner had just addressed. So again, we will know more this week, and I would assume that Joanne would have this on the next Administration and Finance agenda to clarify what our next steps would be. But I just wanted to clarify that as well. Thanks.
Okay, I have Councillor Trombetta, and then I'll go to Councillor Yonker.
That's okay, Mr. Chair. The deputy clerk just answered the question that it's going to come till next meeting. So that's what I was just curious. Thank you. Yeah, that we just sit on this until we hear back from our clerk and the region. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Yonker.
I can agree with I agree with Councillor Trombetta. We wait till we hear back from staff. Perfect.
Yeah, well, I think that's all we were going to do anyways.
Exactly.
I think we were just seeking information on what we currently knew. Any other members of council with any questions or comments at this time? Okay, not seeing or hearing any. I will, sorry, my screen just closed on me. I'm going to go back. So, unless we want the motion read again, I think it's pretty straightforward. Thank Deborah Kuhn-Peterson for her service and wish her all the best in the future and in her future endeavors, and then we'll move forward and see what we deal with next week. So I have a mover and a second, so I need to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so it carries unanimously. Speaking too quick, my mouth's drying out and tripping. All right, so moving to staff reports. Planner 2, Madison Etzel, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, and it's a recommendation report, PD 05-2022, adoption of final secondary plan for East Smithville lands, file number 1700-00221, official plan amendment number 60. And the recommendation is that Plan PD 05-2022 regarding adoption of final secondary plan for East Smithville lands, file number 1701-00221, official plan amendment number 60, dated February 14th, 2021, be received I want to make sure I read that correctly. I think it's supposed to be 2022 be received, and that the official plan amendment number 60 be and is hereby adopted by bylaw, Township Council, followed by the provision of a notice of adoption in accordance with the Planning Act. And 3, that official plan amendment number 60 consisting of the following text and map schedules constitute an amendment to the Township of West Lincoln official plan as amended. And finally, that the necessary bylaw be approved to implement the official plan amendment, and that the decision be circulated as required by the Planning Act. So I need a mover and seconder. I have Councillor Ganane as a mover, Councillor Rayner as a seconder. Any questions or comments? Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the Director of Planning. Mr. Treble, Dan Curry made an excellent presentation. And I do believe, I agree with what he said. This particular project, this East Smithville lands, is in the urban boundary as it stands right now, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, as you well know me, it's going outside the boundaries that get what's left of my hair standing up. This is not, so I don't have a problem with this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council? Not seeing or hearing any. Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. Excellent. So go to item 10.2, which is item P16, 2022, Planner 2, Garrett Borma, and Director of Planning, Brian Treble, and it's a recommendation report, PD 19, 2022, Site Plan Approval Authorization, 6470 Town Line Road, Karen Christian School, Smithville Covenant. I said that wrong. File number 2100-017, 2021. And that report PD 19, 2020, so we have a recommendation, sorry, that was just the motion. Recommendation is that 19, 2022 regarding recommendation report, site plan amendment, authorization of 6470 Town Line Road, Karen Christian School, Smithville, file number 2100-017, 21, dated February 14th, 2022 be received, and that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the an amending site plan agreement with Karen Christian School, and any mortgages once all site plans details are completed to the satisfaction of the planning department. So I need a mover and a seconder. I have Councillor Braderick and Mayor Bilsma. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. All those in favor? And that carries. I have item P17, 2022, and it's a recommendation report, PD 15, 2022, site plan amendment authorization, 1486 Boyle Road. And that recommendation is that report PD 15, 2022 regarding recommendation report site plan amendment authorization 1486 Boyle Road, file number 2100-02121 dated February 14, 2022 be received, and that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the site plan amending agreement with Penny Poliquin, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and any mortgages once all site plan details are completed to the satisfaction of the planning department. So I'm going to need a mover for that one. Councillor Yonker, and I have seconder. Who's my seconder? Councillor Braderick. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. And moving along here, 10.4. Or 10.4, I should say. So item P18, oh, sorry, we got that covered earlier, so we'll scoop along. So we have 10.5, item P19, 2022, Planner 2, Garrett Burma, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, and the recommendation report is PD 17, 2022, Site Plan Approval Authorization of 113 Griffin Street, former Masonic Hall, Skillshare Brothers, Inc., file number 2100-02021, and the recommendation is that the report PD 17 2020 or 2022, I should say, regarding the recommendation report, site plan approval authorization, 113 Griffin Street, Skillshare Brothers Inc., file number 2100-02021, dated February 14th, 2022, be received, and that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a site plan amendment with Skillshare Brothers Inc. and any mortgages once the site plan details are completed to the satisfaction of the planning department. I need a mover for that one. Councillor Rayner and Councillor Yonkers, my seconder. Any questions or comments? I got Councillor Ganane and then Councillor Rayner.
Ready first?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Councillor Ganane, go first, sorry.
Okay.
I was just writing down the order.
As you were writing, I was ready. Thank you. I just have a question for Mr. Borma since he presented this. And I see that the parking is in back, as it should be, and I'm really happy to see that. But I'm wondering about the driveway between the two properties. We have the barber shop property on one side and then the Masonic Hall. And I know that there was an issue a while back in terms of that space and who has the right of way. At one point in time, I think one portion of it was assumed to be a parking spot by the owner of one of the facilities. In any case, I'm wondering if you have an update on that, Mr. Borma, in terms of where we are now with settling that issue. Thank you.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Ganan, we did receive some information from the applicant a while back containing information about a title search that was done, which seems to indicate that they do have a right-of-way access over the abutting lands, and that narrow space between the two buildings access the right-of-way. But we have yet to confirm that with the applicants and with our own township legal, and we will ensure that that is confirmed before we go forward with any approval of any site plan allowing parking in the back of that property.
Thank you. Okay. At least it's being looked at, and that's all I'm concerned about. So thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Councillor Rayner.
Thank you. Through to the Director of Planning, Mr. Treble. This Masonic Hall, it has a very old look to it. Is it from the early to mid 1800s?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll pass this over to Garrett, who is actually Secretary of our Heritage Committee, so I'm sure he'll have a better answer than I will. Sorry, Councillor Rayner.
Okay.
All right. Sorry,
Through the chair.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Sorry, I just assume you knew.
Yep, thank you. I do not know the age of that building. I believe it is fairly old, but I can definitely look that up and find it. The owners are not presenting any changes to the facade or the exterior of the building. They wish to keep that, the existing brick outside of the building, only changes internal, and the removal of an addition that was added later to that building at the rear to make room for some of the surface parking.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because there's been a number of times in my years of being a councillor and an alderman where we've dealt with people from the Heritage Committee, and this to me is a fine example of an old building that we have a local contractor who's got an interest, as you said, Mr. Boersma, of preserving the facade and the character and style that reflects the age to which it was built, which gives the character to the town as far as I'm concerned. And yes, change it inside, make it safe, make it modern, make it the best you can, but still give that beautiful appearance of the age to which it was built. I think it's really a compliment to Schulstra Brothers to take on this project because lots of times you see these buildings decay to the point where we lost the one across the road about 10 or 15 years ago, right on the corner. And it was a gorgeous building with beautiful architectural structure. But when you let the roof collapse, the destruction of any building, especially barns, the roof goes first and the house follows. And if these buildings aren't looked after and kept up, that's what will happen to them. And then ultimately they cannot be saved and they are taken down. So this is really, especially in town, this to me is just an excellent example of community working to save the heritage and the appearance of our town. So when people drive through, they can look and see not only the newer buildings, but the older buildings that were here that first established this town. It's a very good credit. I think it's they should be complimented for it. And that was basically all I need to say. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other members of committee? Not seeing or hearing any. Okay, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Okay, and that carries. So move to item P 2022, recommendation report PD 24 2022, request now received from landowners group for a minister's zoning order, and that the PD 24-2022 regarding recommendation report request now received from landowners group for a minister's zoning order dated February 14th, 2022 be received, and that staff be authorized to consult with Matthew Corey of Malone Givens Parsons Inc. with cost being charged to the bill back account, and that is to charge back to the landowners and to provide a comprehensive report back to committee as quickly as possible. So I need a mover for that one. Councillor Ganan, a seconder, Mayor Bilsma. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and that carries. All right. And so we're going to move forward to, let me make sure I didn't skip ahead here. All right, so we got item 21 or P21 2022 recommendation report PD 2022 or 22-2022, and then it starts with another 2022 building fees bylaw review in accordance with comprehensive user fee report. Sorry, I'm laughing because all these words are right at the top of each other. That report, PD 22-2022, regarding recommendation report 2022, building fees bylaw review in accordance with comprehensive user fee report dated February 14th, 2022, be received, and that a public meeting be held for the purpose of presenting the new building fees as found in the comprehensive user fees report to the public as the new building fees to be implemented at a future date in 2022. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that one. I got Councillor Trombetta and I got Councillor Braderick. Any questions or comments? Well, I just want to mention that there's a lot of 22s in this one, and it was felt very redundant. Anyways, okay, all that being said, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All right, and any opposed? All right, that carries. So we got item P2222, Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble recommendation report PD 21-2022 review of draft a regional official plan, and this is the recommendation that report PD 21-2022 regarding the recommendation report review of draft regional official plan dated February 14th, 2022 be received. And that the consultant's review of the draft new regional official plan be charged to the planning operational external consultant's budget line unless paid for by the landowners group, and that any consultant comments and or concerns on the regional official plan be forwarded to the region in a timely fashion with a report to Planning, Building, Environmental Committee at its earliest possible opportunity. So I need a mover for that one. Councillor Ganan, seconder. I got Mayor Bilsma. Any questions or comments? I got Councillor Rayner. You can't hear, or you? All right, I see your lips moving, so we'll give you a second there. Yeah, you just got to unmute yourself there. Why don't you try hitting the space bar on the computer? No. We'll give you a minute here.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Could I suggest that maybe our WeStream friends help Councillor Rayner?
Okay. I don't know if, is it WeStream or will we ask IT?
That's a good
question.
Oh,
you figured it out. You figured it out.
I got it back.
All right. Floor is yours.
It must be me or Caster, one of the two. Anyways, through you to the Director of Planning, can you just go over this for the benefit of those who don't have this report, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. The region of Niagara has been working on a new regional official plan for the region. Gosh, Mr. Mayor, I bet it's getting close to 3 years now. They've been working away background reports and all sorts of detailed, extensive documents to put in place a new regional official plan. The existing official plan goes back into the 70s and has been modified a few times, but never had an overhaul, and this is a complete rewrite. So the new regional official plan looks at, of course, protecting agricultural land and protecting significant environmental features, and in fact, there's been extensive discussions at regional council around what option for environmental protection they want to have put forward and whatnot. And so that has been deliberated on. This official plan also includes adjustments to Hamlet area and settlement area boundaries. And so the proposals that have been presented in West Lincoln's case with respect to adjusting the boundary of Smithville and adjusting the boundary of Fulton and a few others are incorporated as proposed by staff. The report that's been presented tonight is to have our consultants that are doing our urban boundary expansion work take a look at the regional policies as drafted to make sure that they seem to be consistent with what we intend for them to say as they affect the township of West Lincoln and our hamlets and Smithville areas. So it's just basically asking for committee to have our consulting team take a look at the, I don't know, it's got to be a 300-page document to make sure it seems to be consistent and reflective of our interests here in West Lincoln. And our consultants will then report back to us. And depending on timing, they might have to report to the region first before they report back to us. But one way or the other, you'll hear a report back in terms of what our consultants say about the region's draft plan.
All right. Good. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions. Any other members of the committee have any other questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. So we move to other business. There is one other business item. I guess I'll probably have to step down from the chair here to do this. So I'll hand over the chair just to Councillor Ganan, who's the vice chair of planning, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving up the chair. So on this item, we have a recommendation that's been brought forward by Councillor Riley, re-dissolving the Ontario Land Tribunal. The recommendation is that the resolution adopted by the Town of Halton Hills Council at their meeting of February 7th, 2022, regarding the request for the Government of Ontario to dissolve the Ontario Land Tribunal be received and supported. So we need a mover for this, Councillor Trombetta, and a seconder, Councillor Riley. I could have let you move it.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It's okay, as long as you're there.
Yeah.
In any case, I presume you want to speak to this.
Yes.
So go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
I figured I'd explain a little bit why it's here. So I think we've all heard from our own constituents from time and time again about the frustrations, and we've heard it from council as well, the frustrations that we go through as municipalities. Our staff put in, loads of hours, hundreds of thousands of dollars when it comes to creating official plans and all the other stuff that goes into planning and organizing a municipality. And then when it comes time to deal things such as zoning and dealing with growth, we are the elected bodies that are supposed to take that voice of the people and apply it to how we grow the community. But we often find ourselves at crossroads where a developer doesn't necessarily agree with the will of council or the will of the people, and they go to the tribunal, and the tribunal has an opportunity to say yay or nay. And what we've noticed historically is they often say more yay than nay to developers. So what we have here, and we're welcome to change it if anyone's uncomfortable with the actual writing of the overall endorsement here. But basically, the meat and potatoes is that we're asking the Ontario government to dissolve the OLT and to leave that kind of decision planning to people who are elected and can be held accountable to the type of things that happens in their community. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I don't know if anybody else have any other questions or comments, but that's, I just thought, as I saw this circulating through our emails, we saw a few other municipalities come up, and it was just one of those things where, I caught my eye again and I reread it, and I just felt this was something that we could easily endorse and see where it goes. And if maybe nothing more, it'd be nice to dissolve it, but if they don't, maybe they're willing to work with municipalities more to make sure that we're actually meeting the needs of our community and not just the needs of the developers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Councillor Ganan. Reading this and stating what Councillor Riley said, that's one thing as a councillor. I've been sitting here for 8 years, and there have been some contentious decisions we had to make, even in regards to medical marijuana facilities coming. And, we casted a vote, and it fails because we don't support it, and then they fight a tribunal, and obviously what happens at the tribunal, certain decisions could be overturned, and that's one thing that really stressed me as a counselor, because your constituents are coming to us saying, well, what are you doing? How we, we have petitions, they've done their work, they've stressed to their council, they elected us to make a decision, and then, shucks, we make the right decision for our constituents, and unfortunately it goes to the tribunal and our decisions is reversed. So I don't know where this is going to go, but if it's ever going to go back that way, to give the powers back for those big decisions to councils. But I do support this being received and supported this evening, because I think in the future, hopefully we can get a little bit more power back to these local municipalities to make decisions for our constituents. That's all my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Is there any further comments? Okay, Mayor Bylsma, please.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. So in the main, I don't think it's any surprise to anybody. I'm always in favor of less government and less bureaucracy, and so in the gist, I can support this. Unfortunately, I think we also have to understand that the municipality, it's always been said also in the same number of years that I've been on council with Councilor Trombetta, that the municipality is birthed out of the province, and so the province retains. I'd be surprised if they give it up. They retain that kind of right of last refusal, so to speak, and I think it's a little unfair to say that the developers go there and get what they want. I think that the developers have done their homework and they know what they can get. And when they don't receive it at the local level because we were withholding something, perhaps maybe the fifth floor on a 4-story building or something like that, they know what they can achieve. And so if they go there and they know the public, the provincial policies, they appeal to the provincial policy set. And that's where I think we have a bit of a rub, is that we have a different idea for the growth of our town than the province does for the growth of our town. And that's kind of, I feel, where we have that challenge. And so, again, there's my desire to see bureaucracy reduced. There's the reality that the province likes to retain the right of last refusal. I wish that they would acknowledge and find a compromise, or at least give deference if we've come close to meeting their obligations or their policy set. And we've made a real sincere effort to come close to that they would also honor that and not give deference to the developers to the final extreme. So, for example, on a 4-story, 5-story discussion, if we have in part worked with our community, the height of a building can be 5, but we've negotiated it with 4. And I think that the province should honor that. We want a 4 and not a 5. For example, even though 5 can be put there, 4 is pretty close. If it was 3, I can see that the developer would want to make that appeal. So those are kind of an example of where I'm saying that unfortunately the OLT seems to be we seem to be doing the heavy lifting for the province when it comes to all the arbitration, discussion, negotiations, and then finally they just come along and rubber stamp their thing. So a little bit of a challenge there, but again, in the main, I'm all in favor of asking the province to consider reducing the bureaucracy. I really am, and I just I guess we'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Rayner, you want to speak?
Yes, through you to Chair Bill. Was this through the OMA?
The OMA. No, this was an email that we received that was circulated to, all municipalities. And actually at the bottom of it, it'll also tell who else it was circulated to. I'm just scrolling there. So it's basically, it was from Halton Hills, which was probably a resolution from another municipality, but they've custom it to fit their municipality and circulated through all the, basically, leader of the opposition, leader of all the different parties, small, urban, large, German, regional chairs, and then associations of municipalities of Ontario.
So this went through AMO?
No.
It didn't go through anybody. This has just been shared. Like they're basically petitioning the province, and this has just been shared to us to be able to see what they sent forward, because they're looking for support. Because as Councillor, or Mayor Billsman mentioned, like maybe the end result isn't it's dissolved, but some more cooperation or some more collaboration that allows us to have a little bit more say in those decisions. So this is really just a conversation starter. Is probably the best way to put it.
I guess I understand that, but if you look at the whole picture of what's been going on in the province in the last little while, you can see that the current government does not respect farmland. You can tell by what's been going on about their plans of so-called 2051 or whatever it is, and wanting like 5,000 acres out of Halton and 3,000 acres out of Hamilton. And since this government's come in, it's been very clear that it's been run by developers and people with big money. So, maybe June will change this, but I don't say that it's not worth trying. I'm just saying that the pattern of control by the people with the money, they would just smile at this and throw it in the waste paper basket, because they're going to do what they're going to do, and they've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years. And as long as the individual is still in power, they're going to continue to do it, because it's very clear on the wall. In fact, the biggest one, the most frustrating to me of all, is drive up Grimsby Mountain Road, head south, you're going up the hill, and you're just passing the new fire hall. And what's the first sign you're seeing? You're entering the Greenbelt. And what have you just seen? Multi-million-dollar houses in the last couple of years being built just past the sign that says you're entering the Greenbelt. Figure that one out. So anyways, I don't disagree with this. I would support it, but I honestly think they got a chance of winning this like you and I have a chance of winning Lotto Max.
Thank you, Council.
Thanks.
Any further comments?
So I'll make one more.
Okay, so then back to you, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I get what you're saying, Councillor Rayner, and in all honesty, I think it's one of those things. It's kind of like with the amalgamation, where we could have sat there and said absolutely nothing, but we pushed where we can. And I think this is an opportunity where we hear it. I hear it all the time. I know many of us around the Horseshoe here hear it all the time from our residents about the frustration of growing pains, and then them saying, well, what if we don't want it, we should just not do it. And it's like, well, this is how it's going to play out if we just downright deny it. And I think the real problem comes down to allowing us to have a little bit more say in the final days of the decision making versus having it completely in the hands out of our control. And as much as what Mayor Billsman said in terms of if we can kind of, with the minor differences, I do want to mention, like, we have a few really great developers and builders in our community. There's no taking away the effort and the time and the respect that they put in and making sure that they're meeting the community needs and working with our staff. But I'll pass the light a little bit to what Grimsby and Lincoln are even struggling with, and some of the more bigger developments they have there, and they're in the same boat. You can fight it, lose it, spend more money. You've already spent the millions and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to kind of get all the policies and bylaws in place, just to have it kind of thrown away just because of going from, like I say, an 8-story building to a 9-story building, or they were at 10 and they negotiated down 9. Like, that's not what people want. And I think we have to be more mindful of, or at least advocate on behalf of the people to find that happier medium. And I think that's the real struggle we have right now, because it doesn't feel like there's a happier medium. It feels like people are having to compromise more than they're getting. And so I think something as simple as just showing a little bit of support here, at the end of the day, it might do absolutely nothing, but it doesn't hurt to try, and it doesn't hurt for the province to feel a little bit of pressure, knowing that there's another municipality out there that disagrees, and maybe that just becomes a conversation starter for how they can correct and fix that moving forward. So that's all my comments.
Okay, thank you. One last call for any further comments from anyone? No? All right, then the recommendation is on the floor. We have a mover and a seconder, and so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry. All right. And I'll thank Councillor Gannan for taking the chair there for me. Appreciate that. So at this point, we're moving forward to members of committee. If there's any other business matters of informative nature, so I'll look around. I'll start the Horseshoe here. So any other members? No, I see Councillor Yonker. So I'll go to Councillor Yonker.
Yeah, just want to express the fact that the CBC was given misinformation about my attendance record by a council member, and it was not a staff member of Township. I have missed a few meetings because of regular business reasons. One being a truck stuck in a blizzard, and it has nothing to do with what is going on for the last 2 weeks. I don't want a discussion about this, but hopefully the CBC reports on this truthfully. The only reason I am bringing this up is to reassure the public and the residents of Ward 2 that I am still available through my regular contacts. Thank you.
Okay, any other members of committee? So I'm going to make a quick comment as well. As you know, Councillor Yonker didn't want to name anyone, but I'll make it clear it was myself that had gone public with this, so I have no problem wearing that in any capacity. My reporting was not incorrect, sir. You did miss 4 meetings. You missed, and I could spell it out, you missed a special council meeting, the administration, fire and finance meeting, and you also missed your own chairing meeting of the Public Works Recreation Arena, and then you also missed the council meeting. At no point did I indicate that that was just related to the protest. My concern was that it looked like it was going to be a trend, and that going forward,
That's the staff's job to do that, not yours. Thank you.
Pardon me?
That's the staff's job to point that out, not yours. Thank you.
Well, I'm all about transparency and accountability, and I'm just explaining to you on public
And so
record
am I.
why I did that. So if you don't want my explanation, I don't have to give it. I'm volunteering it willingly, so I have no problem putting myself out there. If you would like that explanation made publicly, if you want me to stop talking, just let me know and I won't proceed. Okay, so I'll stop talking. So if anybody has questions, they can reach out to me privately. All right, so that being said, we have a new business is the next option. So if there are any members of council that have any items of new business, not seeing or hearing any, make sure I'm not going too quick by the screen. We have confidential matters, and so we do have a couple confidential matters, and so I'm going to read that the next portion of this meeting to be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. We have 13.1, Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, legal solicitor client privilege, crossing on the 20, verbal update. Applicable closed session exemptions are litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including the communications necessary for that purpose. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees. So that's 13.1. And the next one is 13.2, which is legal solicitor client privilege, Peter Budd, Ontario, so Ontario Land Tribunal. So that's the OLT. We just had a conversation about that. Verbal update. Applicable closed session exemptions are litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, the security of the property of the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So I need someone to move that and second that for me. So Councillor Braderick, Councillor Trombetta. So all those in favor of going into close? And that, any opposed? All right, we got one opposed. We're going to go into close, and we'll be back shortly. right, so we're just re-adjourning here. I need a mover and a seconder to bring us back into open. Got Councillor Braderick. I'll go Councillor Yonker. All those in favor of opening back up? Okay, any opposed? No, Councillor Yonker voted in support of that, so I recognize that, so no opposition. So we are now back open. I'm going to just read the recommendation. So we are now open at the hour of 8:32 p.m. And just to finish off the night here, we just had 2 verbal updates. One was related to item P25-2022, solicitor-client privilege crossings on the 20, and then the other one was P26-2022, legal solicitor-client privilege, Peter Budd, Ontario Land Tribunal appeal. So at this point, there's no other business. Wish everyone a good evening, happy Valentine's Day, and we'll see you next week. Meeting adjourned at the hour of 8:33 p.m.